Hello, everyone, and welcome back to what for me is a very special The Doctor Will See You Now. I don't know if it's happened to many of you out there, but when you know someone in a certain capacity, and that's great, and then all of a sudden there's a shift, and you are now faced with someone in a very different, a very exciting capacity. Well, today's session is very much that. Uh, it is a total pleasure and delight to welcome Sharon Bairden into the consultancy room. Sharon, welcome. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Noir. I'm fine. I'm good. How are you?
I'm really, really good. I just want to say thank you so much because the publication of your debut novel has actually brought some tremendous joy into COVID life.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the timing for things might not be what we wanted or things like that, but I think when a book is published and it's that moment when we can say, here's something I can disappear into. Although that said, hmm, maybe we should give people a wee warning of what they might be disappearing into. But we'll come to that. We'll come to that. I just, as I said in opening, I am thrilled to see, because I know what this means to you, and I think for crime fiction lovers worldwide, this is going to be a book that shakes the paradigm a little bit and just gives people pause for thought. So wonderful. Now, it's published by Red Dog Press,
Yeah.
and I'll ask you a
Right.
little bit about that. And it's released on the 27th of November. The official launch is the
Yes,
27th
it is.
of November. So um, this recording will be going up on the 26th. So people, you have all the possibility of, if people want to join the launch, Sharon, what do they do?
It's through Eventbrite. So if you go to Eventbrite
Mm.
and search Red Dog Press, and the launch will come up there, and you register. It'll be shown on YouTube, so it'll go live on YouTube. Um,
Fabulous.
27th at 7 p.m.
Fabulous. And that's, you're doing that with Noel Holton, yeah?
with Noel. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So, viewers, if you're watching this on Thursday, the 26th, you've got time to register and get in for that launch. So, now tell me, where did it all begin? And by that, I mean you and crime fiction. Where was the moment that you and crime fiction connected?
Um, Probably show you quite how dark my mind is, probably as a child.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been a massive reader ever since, ever since I was a child, Jackie, and like most folk in my age bracket, grew up with Enid Blyton and the Famous Five and the Secret Seven. Um, but at a very young age, I think I sort of picked up. My family were all readers. There was always books about the house. So picked up some Agatha Christie and thought, oh, I like this. This
Mm,
is dark. But very quickly moved on to the likes of Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and yeah, just I've always liked the darker side of life. I think
mhm,
when it comes to my reading tastes, and I suppose round about sort of my late teens, early 20s, I discovered Lynn Anderson in the library.
wow. Yeah.
And that's I think that's where my love of Scottish crime fiction in particular really developed. I devoured all of her books, and luckily enough, I found her halfway through the series, so I had I had a nice wee TBR there to catch up on. So that I think Scottish crime fiction is like my passion. I love all the Scottish crime writers. So yeah, Lynn Anderson started me off in
Wow.
this particular journey, I guess.
Yeah. That is, yeah, I never knew that. I think I love that connection that's there. When I first met you though, I knew you in your marvelous capacity as a blogger. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so again, just because these to me are all the foundation of what we're here to celebrate. So getting into blogging, why did you do that? What I mean, because you could have just carried on enjoying the reading, but the idea of I want to share my
yeah.
thoughts on this.
And I think again that's it's kind of a sign of the times, isn't it? The online world taught
Hmm.
me that I wasn't the only book geek that existed. Joined a lot of groups on Facebook, and realised that not only did people enjoy reading books, they enjoyed sharing the book love, they enjoyed talking about books, what they enjoyed. So got to know a few bloggers online, and I thought, do you know what? I'll start writing some reviews. Set up my blog, wrote some reviews, but never shared them anywhere because I was like, I don't want anybody to read what I've written. They might laugh. But I think through the encouragement of the blogging community, the this whole community is so supportive, Jackie. Everybody's got each other's backs. Everybody's like, no, go out there, do it. Um, so I took the plunge, and started sharing my blog and my reviews. And from that, I think, I would go to book festivals and that before, but I was very much, I would slip into the audience,
Hmm.
listen, and then leave again, thinking, oh no, I can't go up and speak to an author. I can't approach somebody. But you get to know people at that community through that community. You get to know people through those events, um, and from there, it was not only about book blogging. So I would go, or book reviews. I would go along to events, and I would write blogs or write ups
Hmm.
about book festivals and book launches. I think I had a real passion because I enjoyed those books, and I wanted other people to know about them. I wanted other people to realize that there's so many fantastic writers out there, and not all of them get the
Yes.
the, the
Yep.
place in the spotlight.
Totally.
Um,
Totally. Yeah.
so I feel as a blogger, if I play a very small part in that, but as a community coming together, I think we can shout from the rooftops about some
Yes.
of those writers out there that people might never have heard of.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that because I think very often, especially for people who don't have those large personalities, because everybody's different. Some people find it easy to talk in public or easy to talk about their work, um, but some people don't. And I always think there's a real danger that we're missing out on an excellent novel because
Yeah,
that author doesn't get the publicity that might help them
yeah.
do that.
And I think even with marketing and budgets, not all publishers have got
That's
a
right.
big budget to
That's
go
right.
out and do that marketing. So I think the blogging and the reviewing community have got a major part to play there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so just for anybody who's not familiar with your blog and would like to discover more about your thoughts, what's your blog called?
Chapter in my life,
Chapter.
and it's over at WordPress. So,
Excellent.
and I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, online living, Jackie, online living.
I really, I'm thrilled by that difference of the person who snuck in and snuck out and didn't feel, and yet, today, you're one of the major bloggers, and and one of those people, at festivals that people know and recognize. So, I love that transformation that's gone on, but the real reason why we're here is I want to know that next part of the transformation. Because when was the moment that made you think, okay, I have a story to tell, or I think I want to try this? How did it happen, Sharon?
Um, Again, always as a child and a young person, I wrote. But a lot of us do. We write our stories. As children, as teenagers. But again, I think it's this perception. For me, writers were people who maybe lived in big fancy houses and sat at their computer typewriter or in front of pen and paper and looked out the window into this wonderful view, and inspiration came and they wrote a beautiful story. And I thought, I don't think I could do that. That's for somebody else. But again, and I will keep on harping back to it. It is through the blogging, the writing community, the festival community. There's this real sense of support, and people were saying, "Do you not fancy writing yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't think I could do that." And I'm like, "Yes, you could." So I suppose I dabbled in it a little bit through work, through attending some sort of creative writing groups,
Mhm.
and then started sort of seriously thinking, right, okay, I'm going to start doing this properly. Um, so got the idea and got the sort of story in my head, and then Graham Smith and Michael J. Malone run a weekend crime writing course called Crime and Publishment. And the wonderful Noelle Holton, who had been along to Crime and Publishment, said, "Why don't you come?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't know if it's for me." But she gently nagged me. Graham gently nagged me, and 2 years ago, I went along to my first Crime and Publishment. And came away thinking, do you know what? I actually think I might be able to do this. And so Sins of the Father was born from Crime and Publishment. It was a sort of, it was probably quite a rambled idea before I went there. But just learning that whole process, that whole story structure, and then through obviously my work as well. We were lucky enough to get some lottery funding to run a creative writing group for people who use our service. So we were fortunate enough to be
Brilliant.
able to employ Donna Moore from
Yes,
Glasgow Women's
wonderful.
Library,
Yeah,
yeah, as a writer in residence for
wonderful.
that project. And Donna really, really sparked that inspiration, that self-belief. She's a fantastic woman. And she's fantastic about sharing that passion about writing. So yeah, a combination of my personal and my professional life, I think,
Mm.
sort of took me down that path.
And I'm thinking what you said about, initial thoughts of, I mean, long time ago about what being an author was all about. And what you described was something very solitary.
Yeah.
And yet what has actually happened? I mean, yes, of course, when you write, you are, you're in ensconced and alone and doing the writing, but you've been part of a community
Yeah.
that has enabled you to deliver. I think that, again, I think if anybody is thinking about, oh, could I, should I, that thing of joining with other people.
I would say definitely go for it, because the biggest thing I learned was that authors are real people. They're sitting in ordinary houses. They've got jobs. They've got trials and tribulations like the rest of us.
Mm.
And stories don't just write themselves out of this wonderful inspiration.
Mm.
And there's a whole process to story writing, and what you come out with for your initial draft is very different from the final product as you go through each of those stages. So yeah, I think for anybody out there, thinking about it, I would say go for it. You've got nothing to lose.
Wonderful. I totally agree with you. Go for it. Now then, so let's get to the heart of the matter. Do you have a copy there? Can you hold
I,
us?
I don't actually. My daughter has got my copy.
Oh, mm,
And I don't even have my phone cover on me at the moment. I've got a copy on my Kindle, but
don't know. Never mind,
Sorry.
never mind. It should just pique people's interest then to go away and find out themselves. That's
The cover is very emotive, and um, if you look at the cover and read the story, it's a perfect fit. I absolutely love the cover of my book.
how much say did you have in that cover design?
Um, Lots of say.
You did, yeah.
So yeah, so I worked with Sean at Red Dog Press, and through Pinterest we created a sort of mood board
Hmm.
where we just put lots of random ideas. So I came up with the sort of color scheme, the sort of focus that I wanted for this cover, and Sean was sending me back his thoughts. And it was a very quick process because he obviously completely got my book, and when he sent me the cover I was just like, wow,
That's it. Yeah,
that
yeah.
is it.
So you spoke about starting your work, well, about 2 years ago, getting into this story, developing this story. So it doesn't seem like the moment of getting the book accepted. It seemed to happen quite quickly. Am I right?
I suppose compared to some journeys, 2 years was quite quick. um I didn't get, I submitted to lots of places and got lots of rejections. I got lots of no responses as well.
Hmm.
Um, but I think for me the process was when I come back from Crime and Publishment, I really focused on that book because I was motivated and I spent all my spare time working on it. I then sent it out to beta readers,
Hmm.
who came back to me with really positive but also constructive criticism, that allowed me to further develop that. I then got it professionally edited, because I think it's really important to show your commitment to your work.
Yes.
Um, Submitted it, as I say, got lots of rejections, lots of no responses. But I think Red Dog really appealed to me as a publisher because they're a new and emerging publisher, but they're they're fairly small, and there's a real sense of family again.
Great. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
real sense of belonging. I feel as if I know who my publisher is. I have communication. I'm not just one of millions of people.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it felt like the right fit for me. From that initial discussion over email to the telephone call to the agreement for publishment, it just felt like the right fit. And I'm
Great.
very happy.
Great. Now then, so Sins of the Father. Um, the main protagonist here is Rebecca,
Yeah.
and we go through observing Rebecca's life from childhood, and then the second part of the book into adulthood. But I would prefer if you would, because she is your creation. Please, would you describe to us who she is and how you found this character? Because I, this is not an easy character at all. So if if you can share with us who is she and how she came about in your in your
In my
creative process.
mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think for me, Rebecca's story is about looking at looking at society and looking at some of the darker things that go on in our world, looking at some of the systems and the processes that I think are broken and don't work with people. And through my day job, people talk about adverse childhood experiences and how they impact people in terms of trauma. But I firmly believe as people go through a system and go through a process, we should be looking at adverse system experiences,
Mm,
because I think sometimes sometimes systems can re-traumatize. Um, and can impact on people further. So I think Rebecca's not based on anybody. I think Rebecca came to me just through this idea of exploring the impact of trauma for me, because a lot of people who find themselves embroiled in services and find themselves, going through a challenge in life, most of them have experienced some form of trauma in their past life. So for me, this story was about exploring, trauma, the impact on that individual, but also, through the story and through the genre, you have to bring in some other themes and that there. So it was about betrayal. There's there's revenge, but yeah, I think probably everything that I would write would be based on personal and professional experience of people's people's experience of trauma, but also people's experience of systems and processes that are maybe not always set up to support as well as they could.
As they could, yeah. I'm. I think, not only Rebecca's personal story, but for me, it's the kind of book that does what contemporary crime fiction to me should do. And it is really, put that microscope, you know, society, and what ask those really difficult questions.
Yeah, and I think for me, Rebecca, to read the book, Rebecca's possibly not the most likable character.
Mm-hmm.
She can be hard to engage with. She's prickly. There's a lot of issues there, but I would hope that people could find some empathy and some compassion for Rebecca, in terms of, obviously through the first part of the book, we explore a little bit of Rebecca's life and through that system. And then as she moves into adulthood, I would hope that people could find some compassion and empathy for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I wondered about yourself. Were there any points in as you developed the story where you felt I need to just come away from this for a moment, because there were some extremely dark moments, some very
Yeah.
difficult moments, and I think when you are the person who creates this, it's sitting within already. I think, we as the readers, we consume it, but it comes from outside.
Mm-hmm.
This was coming from inside you. Did you have to say at some point, right, I need to go and do something totally different for a minute?
Yeah, so, sometimes, but I think again, it's been able to separate yourself from what you're putting on paper, and again, because I'm so passionate about people's rights and justice and
Yeah.
things that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was almost a sort of therapeutic process writing this. Not in Rebecca's story isn't my story, but it was almost, this was an opportunity for me to to explore and get something out of me that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, it was dark, and sometimes I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and put that down, and I'll go and watch something lovely and cheery on Netflix. But no, I didn't. Maybe that's a sign of how dark my mind is, Jackie. That I'm quite happy
Yeah.
living in those dark places.
So, a child failed by the system, and we see that Rebecca, she suffers from, right, let me get this right, dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah,
You see, this is the thing with crime fiction. You learn so much. You don't just learn about who did it or why they did it, but you get so much more. Um, for anybody who's not familiar with that term and what it means, could you talk to us a little bit
yeah.
about that?
I suppose most people would know it as multiple personality disorder.
Okay, yeah,
So dissociative personality disorder is what it's now known as, and that condition is very much born out of trauma, where other identities allow the person to cope with and deal with what has happened to them in the past. Um, it can, it's a very upsetting, it can be a very upsetting and challenging condition. But if you look at all the studies, if you look at psychology, and you look at that disorder, and you go back in somebody's life, you can see that that condition is very much born out of trauma, and it's almost like the mind's coping mechanism, so that you as an individual cannot cope with this at the moment. So your other identity comes in and deals with that for you.
okay,
And people talk about having many personalities to deal with different parts of their life. So
yeah, yeah, and I think that the main personality that comes out there is Samantha,
yeah.
is it not, for Rebecca? Could you describe a little bit of who Samantha is, or how she does serve to protect Rebecca?
Samantha's very much the darker side of Rebecca, and Samantha was one of Rebecca's personalities who protected her through childhood and who protected her. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to.
Of
It's
course.
very difficult not to give away parts of the story, but Samantha is the one that who drives Rebecca's revenge, and her need for revenge, which is why what I talk about. I hope that people have a bit more empathy for Rebecca, and
Mm,
remembering what has happened to her. But yes, Samantha's Rebecca's darker side.
thank you. Now, in in the second half then of the book, or the second part of the book, we see Rebecca. I mean, her world changes quite dramatically, um, and married. She has a job, and that husband is Lucas, is
Yes.
it not? Yeah. Who is Lucas, and how did she meet him? I mean, can you divulge a little bit about him?
Um, Lucas is maybe not who we all think he is. Rebecca sought Lucas out. Rebecca didn't marry Lucas because she loved him. Rebecca married Lucas because she wanted to destroy him.
Mm.
And why she wanted to destroy him is very much tied up in the storyline. So I don't want to tell you too
No, no,
much
no, no, no.
more
But
about Lucas, but
but but I love the breadcrumbs that you drop there about the whole notion of why get married.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's very often that the idea of seeking revenge comes after many years of marriage, as opposed to going
Oh,
into it with the
yeah.
yeah, wow,
Rebecca was driven into that relationship by
yeah,
a need to destroy somebody. So,
yeah, yeah,
but as well as Rebecca and Lucas, there's somebody else hovering in the background,
yeah.
who's watching them both as well. Um, yeah, there's
Mm,
there's lots of secrets, and lots of things that uncover slowly, and especially in the second half. So.
mm. And I think that idea of saying to people, sit in on this ride, because by the time you turn those final pages, you know, it's like, oh wow, oh wow, I think, and for you in creating this story, did did you know when you set off where you wanted to go, or or did, did it change while you were creating this, or
Oh, it changed drastically,
yeah,
Jackie. Yeah, the
yeah,
the story probably the middle of the story came to me first, and it was you know at that at that point at the beginning of my writing journey, and it was going in all sorts of different directions, I think. Um, but Rebecca came to me, the Lucas came to me, the characters and that middle part of the story came to me, but and this is where I sound really weird. It was like one night I have sleep paralysis. For anybody who doesn't know what sleep paralysis is, it's a really bizarre nightmare where you are unable to move and you're experiencing all sorts of different things going on. And I've had it for a long time, and it's it's not really it's not an issue. It's quite scary to start with. So the prologue came to me. I woke up one night after an episode and I thought, I actually have to write that down because
Oh,
that was really
really?
intense. And as I was writing it down, I thought, Rebecca, this this is inside, this is Rebecca's head. And then that's where my story started flowing from, and things started to fall into place. But I didn't know what was going to happen at the end. I probably and even now while I'm writing, I know a lot of people plan and they'll plan things
Yes,
out.
yeah.
I'm very much something comes into my head, a situation, a character, a scenario, and I start writing, which is probably not always the best way to do it because it can be quite frustrating. But it's not until the middle, after the middle, where I think a penny just drops in your
And
head
then,
and you
yeah.
think, yeah, this is where it's going. Um,
And whilst now I don't want to move away too much from Sins of the Father because that's what we're here to celebrate, but this is, of course, this is not a police procedural. This is
no.
not a private eye. It's nothing like that. So I wonder from here, where will you go? What, because this surely, this cannot be the only piece that we get from you, because given the
I hope not.
quality, no, no, not at all, Sharon, because given the quality of this, it's like, wow, what next? I mean, do you have ideas bubbling already?
Yeah, I've book two is completed and has been submitted,
Wow, yes.
but
Oh,
I don't know if it's getting published or not. So,
mhm.
and I have started writing book three, but
Oh,
there I'm not going to go down the police procedural route yet. They're all in the sort of psychological thriller, suspense, domestic noir sort of genre. That's that I enjoy reading that alongside crime fiction as well. Maybe I'm too lazy to do crime fiction because all the research and things you need to know about police procedure
yeah,
that I
yeah,
don't know. So yeah, but I like that genre. Susie Lyons is one of my major influences. S.E. Lyons, she
yeah,
writes as her books, really tease out and explore some of the darker issues, but also issues that that are common to a lot of us,
mm.
a lot of us face. So yeah, when I grow up, I want to be Susie Lyons. So.
Yeah. I love what you say. So if we can go back to what you were saying about how the book, can serve as a critique of a system that fails
Mhm.
people, and thinking of your own work in the advocacy service and what you'll have seen and what you deal with, it's a bit of a big question, this, but do you feel that there is hope? I mean, can we change a system so that it does serve people in a better way?
I think you've always got to have hope, Jackie. No matter what area of life. I think there is hope. I look back to the system and the processes 20, 30 years ago, and there's been massive changes, massive improvements made. And yeah, I always believe there's hope, and I always believe that while there's people out there shouting for change and people out there, pushing for changes to be made, then that will happen. Will it happen quickly? is it going to happen quickly enough for me? Probably not. I find myself getting angry at things all the
Yeah.
time. I see things that I think, that's not going to take a lot of money. It's, there's no cost or resources involved in changing that. It's about culture, it's about attitudes, values, right through to recruitment, and bringing in the people with the right passion, attitudes, and values to do the job. So you could start me on a rant here that would go on for hours. So you're probably better not going down that road.
I really appreciate, even in what you said now, though, seeing that passion, and I think that same passion is borne out on the pages of the
Thank
book.
you.
You know,
Thank you.
that's that real underlying strand that runs through. And I think, as you've said, that as readers we might not take to Rebecca. It's not easy to take to Rebecca, but what I think it is very, very possible to do is feel for this first of all, this child, this young woman, and then consider her actions and why things happened the way they did. um yeah, I think your writing leaves us with not questions about the book, but questions to go on and consider, looking out into real life.
Yeah,
uh,
that's good to hear, because I think that's what I hoped. And I think as a writer you do worry that you're sometimes doing a disservice to people, especially in this genre, because I would really like to make it abundantly clear that people who live with trauma, people who live with mental health and conditions, do not go out hurting people. Do not go out seeking revenge. You've got to sometimes use that tool to write. Um, but for me, it was about raising some of those issues and some of those questions
mm,
that I hope that other people go away and think about. I hope it maybe prompts other people to shout for change, to shout
yeah,
for improvements.
yeah,
So
yeah. I again, coming from fiction, the impetus that can come from good storytelling to make a difference in people's lives. I have one last question, if that's all right with you. And
of
it's to do
course,
with the title, because, of course, the title has a real religious feel to it. Um, did the title come before anything else? Was that always
so
roaming around? No?
the title came at a specific point in the book. Again, I'm not going to tell you what that point is, but the title came to me as I wrote a particular chapter, and I thought, wow, that's what it is.
Mm,
So
mm, mm.
um, that was the title I submitted, and the publishers were happy with it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's wonderful. Well, Sharon, I really appreciate you taking the time to visit us here. And the doctor will see you now. It has been, just that, to get into your process, to get into where Rebecca came from, and what is behind your writing. So really appreciate that, and we wish you all the very best with Sins of the Father. Please, viewers, highly recommended, for a challenging but extremely satisfying read by the time, as I say, you get to those final pages. So Sharon, with your launch on the 27th.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you. This has probably been the most interesting visit to a doctor's that I've had for a long time, Jackie. Um, so thank you for inviting me into your surgery. It's been a pleasure. Yeah,
I
and for anybody that wants to come along to the launch, it's happening tomorrow night, 27th at 7 p.m. And just go to Eventbrite, Red Dog Press, and you'll find me there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sharon. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.